We live in a world that glorifies busyness. Saying yes is praised, while saying no feels like failure. We stretch ourselves thin, trying to meet expectations, trying to be everything for everyone, until we realize we've lost ourselves in the process. But what if I told you that setting boundaries isn't selfish? That balance isn't about doing more, but about doing what truly matters. That living authentically doesn't require guilt, but it does require courage. Let's talk about how we reclaim our time, our energy, and our sense of self. Let's talk about boundaries and balance. From a young age, we are taught to be kind, to be generous, to be available. We are told that being helpful makes us valuable, that saying yes makes us reliable, that putting others before ourselves is a virtue. And while kindness is a strength and generosity is beautiful, somewhere along the way, we start believing that our own needs don't matter. That in order to be good, we must be endlessly giving, endlessly accessible, endlessly accommodating. But the truth is, without boundaries, we lose ourselves. Boundaries are not about shutting people out. They are about protecting what matters most: your time, your energy, your well-being. Think of your life as a house. If you leave the doors and windows wide open at all times, anyone can walk in. They can bring in their expectations, their opinions, their demands. And over time, your space, your home, becomes chaotic. You lose control over who enters and what stays. But when you set boundaries, you take responsibility for your space. You decide who gets access, when, and under what conditions. You don't let just anyone walk in uninvited. You protect the things that make your space feel like home. Boundaries are a form of self-respect because they remind you and others that you matter. When you set a boundary, you're not saying, "I don't care about you." You're saying, "I also care about me." And yet so many of us struggle with this. We hesitate to set limits because we don't want to seem difficult, we don't want to disappoint people, we don't want to create conflict. We tell ourselves, it's fine, it's not a big deal, I can handle it. But over time, the small things we tolerate become the big things that drain us. Every time you ignore your own limits to make someone else comfortable, you are teaching them that your needs don't matter. Every time you say yes when you really mean no, you are sending the message that your time is not valuable. Every time you allow disrespect, you are silently agreeing that it is acceptable. And before you know it, you are exhausted, not just physically, but emotionally, mentally, even spiritually, because you have given so much of yourself away that there is nothing left. Think about this. The people who set boundaries are often the ones we respect the most. Why? Because they know their worth. They know their limits. They don't sacrifice their well-being just to be liked. And because they respect themselves, others respect them too. Yet the moment we try to set boundaries for ourselves, we hesitate, we feel guilty, we second-guess our right to say no. But here's what we need to understand. Guilt is not a sign that you are doing something wrong. It's a sign that you are doing something different. If you have spent years overextending yourself, putting others first, and ignoring your own needs, then of course setting boundaries will feel uncomfortable at first. But discomfort does not mean you are making a mistake. Discomfort means you are growing. And here's the thing. People who genuinely care about you will respect your boundaries. The ones who get upset, who push back, who try to guilt trip you into changing your mind, those are the people who benefited from your lack of boundaries. And that is all the more reason to keep them. Boundaries don't just protect you from being overwhelmed. They allow you to show up in the world as your best self. They ensure that when you give, you are giving from a place of abundance, not resentment. They help you create a life that is not just about meeting the expectations of others, but about honoring your own needs, dreams, and priorities. Because at the end of the day, the most important relationship you will ever have, the one that sets the standard for every other relationship in your life, is the one you have with yourself. And that relationship is built on one foundational truth. You deserve the same respect, care, and kindness that you so freely give to others. Guilt is a powerful emotion. It has been ingrained in us from a young age, shaping how we interact with the world, how we make decisions, and how we define our own sense of right and wrong. We are taught to be considerate, to be thoughtful, to be giving, and these are good things. But somewhere along the way, many of us start equating guilt with wrongdoing. We start believing that if we feel guilty, it must mean we've done something wrong. But that's not always true. Guilt is not always an indicator of a mistake. Sometimes guilt is just a byproduct of change. Think about it. Whenever we try to change a long-standing pattern, we feel resistance. That's normal. It's uncomfortable to start saying no when we're used to saying yes. It's unsettling to put ourselves first when we've spent years putting others before us. It's difficult to set boundaries when we've been conditioned to believe that being available, selfless, and accommodating is the only way to be good. And the moment we push back, the moment we prioritize ourselves, that's when guilt shows up. But here's the truth. Guilt is not proof that you are doing something wrong. It is proof that you are doing something different. Think about all the times you've ignored your own needs to avoid feeling guilty, the times you said yes when you really wanted to say no, the times you overcommitted yourself because you didn't want to disappoint someone, the times you tolerated behavior that drained you because you were afraid of seeming selfish. In those moments, guilt wasn't guiding you to do the right thing. It was keeping you stuck, because guilt is often a learned response. Many of us grew up in environments where we were made to feel guilty for asserting ourselves. Maybe we were told we were being difficult if we didn't comply. Maybe we were guilt-tripped into doing things we didn't want to do. Maybe we learned that keeping the peace was more important than honoring our own feelings. And so, as adults, we carry that conditioning with us. We feel guilty for declining invitations even when we need rest. We feel guilty for setting limits with people even when their behavior is harmful. We feel guilty for making choices that align with our values even when they don't hurt anyone. But guilt does not always mean we've done something wrong. Sometimes guilt is just a signal that we are stepping outside of an old identity. If you've spent your whole life being a people pleaser, setting boundaries will feel wrong at first. If you've spent your whole life putting others ahead of yourself, prioritizing your needs will feel selfish. If you've spent your whole life saying yes out of obligation, saying no will feel like a betrayal. But it's not. Because here's the thing, the people who truly care about you will not punish you for prioritizing your well-being. The ones who get upset, the ones who push back, the ones who make you feel guilty, those are often the people who benefited from your lack of boundaries. And that's all the more reason to set them. Guilt is not a compass for morality. It is simply an emotion, one that arises when we challenge old habits and outdated beliefs. And the only way to move past it is to recognize it for what it is, proof that we are growing. We have been sold a myth that balance means having it all, doing it all, and excelling in every area of life, flawlessly. We see images of people who seem to have mastered it, thriving careers, fulfilling relationships, perfect health, personal hobbies, social lives, and inner peace, and we wonder, why can't I do that? Why do I always feel like I'm falling behind in one area or another? But the truth is, balance is not about doing everything. It's about doing the right things. Too often we mistake balance for a perfect distribution of time and energy across every aspect of our lives. We believe that if we just organize better, work harder, or manage our schedules more efficiently, we can give 100% to our jobs, our families, our friendships, our passions, our self-care all at the same time. But no one can operate at 100% in every area of life all the time. The reality is that balance is not static, it is fluid. It shifts depending on where we are in life, what season we're in, and what truly matters to us in the moment. Think about a tightrope walker. Their goal is not to stay perfectly still on the rope. If they did, they would fall. Instead, they make constant small adjustments, leaning slightly one way, then the other, always making sure they don't tilt too far in one direction. That's what real balance looks like. There will be times when work requires more of you and your personal life takes a step back. There will be times when family or personal relationships demand your focus and your career slows down. There will be times when your mental and physical health must become your top priority and everything else fades into the background. And that's okay, because balance is not about equal effort in all areas. It's about being intentional with where you place your focus. The problem is many of us chase the illusion of balance instead of defining it for ourselves. We take on too much because we think that's what balance looks like. We say yes to everything, afraid of missing out or disappointing others. We fill our schedules to the brim, believing that if we just push harder, we can juggle it all. But what happens when we try to carry too many things at once? We drop them. When we spread ourselves too thin, we end up exhausted, overwhelmed, and frustrated. And worst of all, we stop enjoying the very things we once cared about. Work becomes stressful, relationships feel like obligations, even our hobbies start to feel like chores. Because balance is not about doing more, it's about doing what matters. This is why learning to prioritize is essential. Not everything deserves your energy. Not everything requires your attention. Balance comes when you recognize what is truly important and give yourself permission to let go of the rest. And here's the hardest part. Sometimes balance requires saying no. No to extra commitments that drain you. No to relationships that deplete you. No to unrealistic expectations, both from others and from yourself. But when you start saying no to the things that don't align with your values, you free up space to say yes to what truly matters. And the moment you realize that balance is not about perfection, but about presence, intention, and choice, you take back control over your time, your energy, and your life. Being yourself sounds simple, doesn't it? Just be who you are. Just say what you mean. Just live the way you truly want. And yet the reality is far more complicated, because the moment you decide to be authentic, the moment you choose to show up as your true self, you will face resistance. Not just from the world around you, but from within yourself. We live in a society that constantly tells us who we should be, what success should look like, what happiness should feel like. From a young age, we are taught how to fit in, how to be accepted, how to play by the rules. We learn to shape ourselves to meet expectations, to avoid judgment, to seek approval. And then, somewhere along the way, we start to wonder, who am I? Really, because authenticity is not about being who the world expects you to be. It's about being who you truly are, even when it's uncomfortable. And that takes courage. It takes courage to speak up when your voice shakes. It takes courage to choose your own path when the world pressures you to follow theirs. It takes courage to let go of the version of yourself that others have come to expect. But here's the challenge. Authenticity comes with a cost. The moment you start living truthfully, some people will resist, some will question your choices, some will misunderstand you, because when you choose authenticity, you are no longer playing by the unspoken rules of conformity, and not everyone will like that. We fear authenticity because we fear rejection. We worry that if we show up fully as ourselves, if we stop pretending, stop pleasing, stop performing, people might not accept us. And that fear is real. Some people won't. But here's the truth. The relationships that require you to be someone you're not are not real relationships at all. If you have to dim your light to be accepted, that is not acceptance. It is conditional approval. If you have to shrink yourself to fit into a space, that space was never meant for you. And if you have to betray yourself to make others comfortable, the price you are paying is far too high. The irony is, the more we try to be what others want, the more disconnected we feel from ourselves, from our purpose, from the life we are meant to live. But when we choose to embrace authenticity, something powerful happens. The right people, the ones who truly value us, start to show up. The opportunities that align with who we really are begin to appear. Life feels lighter, freer, more fulfilling. Because authenticity is not about seeking acceptance, it is about creating alignment. Alignment with your values, alignment with your purpose, alignment with the kind of life that feels true to you, not one that was handed to you by others. And yes, it takes courage. It takes the willingness to be misunderstood. It takes the resilience to stand firm in who you are, even when it feels lonely. It takes the strength to release what no longer fits, even when it's all you've ever known. But the cost of inauthenticity is far greater than the discomfort of being real. Because in the end, the greatest loss is not being rejected by others, it is losing yourself in the process of trying to please them. We often think that living authentically, setting boundaries, and finding balance should come naturally. The truth is, it takes work. It takes courage to say no when the world expects a yes. It takes strength to put yourself first without feeling selfish. It takes resilience to challenge the guilt that tries to pull you back into old patterns. And above all, it takes deep self-respect to trust that you deserve a life that aligns with who you truly are, not just who others expect you to be. Boundaries are not about shutting people out. They are about protecting what truly matters. Guilt is not a sign that you are doing something wrong. It is often a sign that you are doing something different. Balance is not about doing everything. It is about choosing what matters most. Authenticity is not always easy. It requires the courage to stand firm in your truth, even when it makes others uncomfortable. And at the heart of it all is one simple truth. You are allowed to take up space in this world, not just as someone who serves, pleases, and accommodates, but as someone who is whole, worthy, and unapologetically yourself. The question is, will you give yourself permission to do so?